I've been thinking, and I apologize for my use of foul language, foul with a W, in regards to yourself. You said some very hurtful things to me in regards to myself, but it is still no excuse to use the vile word that I used, of which I am sure you know that I'm talking about.
Cunt, right?
Yes, Elliot.
Oh, yeah. Welcome, my friends, to Cut to Black, a Sopranos sit-down. In regards to myself, my name is Jim Scampoli, and I've seen every episode of The Sopranos.
In regards to myself, that which I know I'm sure you know of, my name is Jacob Burrows, and I've seen 56 episodes of The Sopranos, which is 56 hours of us sitting down to watch this, and an additional 56 hours on average of us discussing the show. It just kind of struck me. That's why I highlighted that at this point. We're getting up there in Sopranos years, everybody. We're becoming real mature, which is why I'm giggling still about that clip from the intro. So, all happy families, Season 5, Episode 3. Who put this one together?
Ooh, this is actually episode 4, but yes, the people that put this together, this
Right.
episode was written by Toni Kalem, who you actually may know. She's the actress that plays Angie Bumpancero, Big Pussy's wife. And it was directed by Rodrigo Garcia. This is the one and only episode of The Sopranos he did direct. He did go on to direct episodes of 6 Feet Under, Carnival, Big Love, a lot of HBO stuff. So, but this is it for The Sopranos.
What about Toni? Did she do a lot of writing, or was she mainly an actress? I'm just scrolling through her page now. I can't see that much with, writing.
Yeah, I don't think there was a lot of writing, and she's the only other cast member besides Michael Imperioli, who plays Christopher Moltisanti, to cross over to the writing for The Sopranos.
Really interesting. I mean, as someone who is interested in television writing, this makes me go like, actor, right? It should be a lot easier to become an actor, right? And then you could easily transition into being a writer, right? Not sure if that's the case. She has a writing credit for one episode on The Big C. She wrote the TV movie Infidelity and something called A Slipping Down Life and this episode of The Sopranos. But yeah, good episode anyway. Well done, Toni.
Yeah, I agree. Because it's interesting. Like, obviously, with season 4, we have the big blowout with the at the end with Toni and Carmela. And we've only kind of seen little glimpses at the fallout of that. And this episode, a few episodes into the season, we finally get a little bit more of some of the day-to-day, and especially like with what Carmela's up to with this change. And they're continuing the thing of like, we have some Toni and Carmela scenes in the kitchen like we usually get, but now the house is way darker. It doesn't quite look the same. So I like what they're doing with that.
Yeah. And I mean, let's get right into it. There is some mob stuff in this episode, but it feels like the main thing is about AJ, which is probably why we open up with AJ driving in and out of the driveway. I guess he's practicing his parking, right? I mean, that's what I assume he's doing.
Yeah, he's just kind of speeding back and forth, driving through, just being AJ, I guess.
Okay. So Tony B, what was it they called him? Tony Eggs.
Tony Egg or Tony Uncle Al.
Yeah. So he's hanging out at the pool with his two twins, and Tony comes over with like a drill, and when they brought up that he gave it to Carmela's cousin, I was like, oh yeah, I actually do remember him like handing it over in a scene. Did you recall that as well? Because it's like, oh yeah, the point wasn't to give him that; it was like a distraction. So of course he forgot that he did it. Just kind of a fun detail.
You know what? I actually didn't even realize it. You just bring it up now. Yeah, when they were down talking kind of business, and then he gives them I'm just borrowing the drill. And then I guess you can kind of assume with the separation, Tony he doesn't have that same relationship with that dude anymore. But yeah, that makes sense.
So there's also a line here where he comes into the kitchen and Carmela's watching, and she goes like, they will probably go through their entire lives not knowing their father's sperm was smuggled out of jail to get Nancy pregnant. And I'm like, okay, Tony, this is Tony with an I. I don't think it's her fault, but that's a clunky ass line, and it's such a weird thing as well. Like, what a weird thing. It feels like it's just there because someone fucked up the dates of like, shit, he's been away for 30 years, but the kids are like 12. How do we make this make sense? And Tony's just like, well, I had to do something to, like, it's the least I could do. And it's like, okay, so that didn't make any fucking sense, or at least it felt like it didn't. And they just put that in there so that people wouldn't go, but wait, how are the kids that young?
It's weird. I believe that as well, but I also believe, like, with the way The Sopranos is written, that's also just kind of a funny thing. And I know that they like little funny moments, but it does feel like something they would get a little bit more into. But then again, I don't know how you go about, like, you don't need to have a flashback episode where that happens. Because part of me feels like they heard a real story that someone did that, and they're like, "Oh, this is too good. Where can we put this?" And yeah, it's not the most graceful way to do it, but I think it's a fun detail, and it says a lot. At the very least, it does still say a lot. Ties into Tony's thing with his kind of guilt with Tony B, and that he would do something like that. And it is this weird Sopranos. I mean, I guess because we do know that Tony B has an estranged daughter, and maybe it is this weird machismo, like Game of Thrones. I need a male heir.
Yeah,
but you're right.
Just saying
good.
I guess it just says, yeah. I didn't like it. I didn't like it that much, and like we have, so he has a woman who he was with who wanted to get this sperm smuggled out to have these kids, but she's not going to show up for his like welcome out of jail party. And given it's been some years since those kids came into the picture, but it's just it's like they put it there to answer a question that I hadn't even thought of, and instead it just raises 10, 20 more questions for me, and not necessarily in the good way that The Sopranos usually does. But anyway, they quickly move past that onto the drill instead, and Tony gets a bit worked up and has to sit down, and he almost has a bit of an attack now, and she brings up like, what did your therapist say? And he says something along the lines of, well, like, you're the only one who has to cut back on things because of the separation, despite the fact that I'm pretty sure he stopped going there before that.
It's such a great Tony. It's such a Tony moment that he's trying to make Carmela feel bad. Like, and yeah, it's somehow related to their separation that he's not going to therapy. And then even like his weird blow up at the end where it's like, this is why we're separated. And I love that Carmela's like, this is not why we're separated. And I want to back up a little bit to Tony B's scene because he's not in this episode a ton. But I think they do kind of say a lot with a little at the beginning when he's just kind of looking at the house. And, you know, clearly he doesn't have this. And even like, I mean, Tony kind of doesn't have this anymore either. But, you know, nice big house. He's got his feet in the hot tub. They got a pool. You know, it's always tough when you're the have-nots around the haves.
Yes, and you're right. I was also thinking like this scene would usually be like to show, he has all this and I don't. But then it's also like, well, Tony doesn't live here. So it adds an extra dimension to it. He does say, Tony, that he had a full-blown panic attack, or an attack rather, and I don't remember which one he's referring to here. I don't know if that was in this season or the previous one. Do you remember?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, no, I don't remember either.
Because I was wondering, is he referring to something off screen? I don't think he would lie about that because it makes him seem weak, sort of. So it probably did happen. Was it on screen or not? I'm not sure, but it doesn't matter that much because they get into talking about AJ, which is the center of the whole episode here, talking about how they have to go in for a meeting to talk about his lousy grades, and she's upset about the iPod and the drums and all of that. And like you said, he's like, this is why we're not together. And rushes off. Oh, he storms out, but, you know, it's not a therapist's office. So I'm not counting it.
Not quite a storm out, but...
No.
Then we see Lorraine again, and I mean, this is a pretty quick turnaround because wasn't it just the previous episode where they gave her a scare?
Yeah.
But now it's like, and Alan Sepinwall in the Sopranos session kind of points this out, is that this feels a little bit more mean-spirited for the Sopranos and kind of misogynistic. Because now it's just she's running around naked and being chased through her home and just like murdered straight up. I mean, especially if you do subscribe to the theory that it's based on a real person, a critic of the show.
Yeah.
but again, it depends on how much weight you put to that. There's a lot of violence on the show, but yeah, it is just kind of, she gets out of in the previous episode, she's ready to suck cock to stay alive. Now she's getting out of the shower, being chased around. She finds Jason's already dead, and then she gets put out of her misery as well. We see Phil Leotardo kind of out in the car orchestrating the whole thing. Carmine Jr. gets the news.
There was this whole warning, like you said. And what did that lead to? That led to Tony sort of bringing in people, making suggestions, and then it all fizzled out. Like, nothing really happened with it. He was like, yeah, we'll do a triumvirate. And then Johnny Sack didn't like that, so I forget I mentioned it. And then nothing was actually fixed through all those meetings. So I guess it makes sense. Yeah, of course, we got to escalate it like a motherfucker. Just escalate it all up the wazoo. It is... I don't know. It's weird when you have to go like, well, at least they only murdered her, like when she's running around naked there, because you would think maybe they'd throw in some sexual assault as well, which would be not great, obviously. But instead, they only, in quotation marks, murder her. Because I guess they are good at introducing a character where like, oh, I want to find out more about this character, and then they're dead already. So she only had like 3 scenes: introduction, the one where she almost died, and then the one where she died. Oh, okay, she was in the mediation thing as well, but generally speaking. So it's a bit sad, but either way, we gotta play a funny sound effect about it.
Oh, that's right. I was even. We gotta do 2 then, right? Because we also got to count Jason as well. So yeah, damn, tossing them up on the goddamn counter. Let's go for it here.
Yeah.
Let's still plays.
Yeah.
Doesn't that play the next? God damn it.
There we go.
So we're up to what, 45 now?
Yeah, we're on 45 deaths now. These are official deaths, counting only things we've seen on screen to people who've been in the show before, or animals that really matters. Yeah. If they're animals, then they're important. We call the shots. I know some people have different counts of how many deaths are in The Sopranos, but like I remember we didn't count like some lady in a coffin that we'd never heard of, but we might count someone if it's on screen, if they've been in the show. We play by our own rules, much like this lady who got murdered. So yeah, like you said, little Carmine finds out the news. We meet this other character here. I don't think he's been in it before, who's there kind of like, Brooklyn's going to be on our side, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And I'm like, oh, is he like the brains behind the Carmine operation or something?
Yeah, and there's allusions. I didn't pick this up myself. Again, I mean, to plug the Sopranos session, they're describing this as a George W. Bush / Dick Cheney relationship. And I guess it would be time specific if we're going back the old George W. Bush years of America, where Carmine Jr. is kind of more of the, he fumbles his words, the bumbling leader. And then maybe there's someone pushing him in the behind the scenes. Now, this character is named Rusty. He's played by Frankie Valli. Frankie Valli, the frontman for the Four Seasons. You may have heard the songs like Big Girls Don't Cry, Walk Like a Man. I always think of Frankie Valli. There's a line in Goodfellas when Karen gets stood up by, I'm supposed to say his name, but Ray Liotta's character. When they first meet, she gets stood up. She goes, "Who do you think you are, Frankie Valli?" I'm nailing it. I'm nailing the impression, if you will. But yeah, it's just a weird like stunt casting, because not that I would even recognize it, but I just remember that Frankie Valli had a cameo on Henry Hill is from The Sopranos, by the way. I'm from Goodfellas.
Yeah, interesting. I wonder if we'll see more of him or not then in that case. I mean, Carmine's all upset about it, obviously, but it's still like indecision about what needs to be done. But it is like, it's almost like it's more of, it's not really about this particular person you murdered. It's more like, yeah, we're sending a message to everyone else, which is what we get to discussing in the next scene with Tony hanging out with his crew, and Feech shows up as well. It's a Feech heavy episode for reasons that will become apparent. But yeah, they're just sort of discussing how they're sending a message in that. And Feech tells his story about, well, in the old days, it would have gone like this and like that. And
And Tony's already, like, even in this first scene, and as we see throughout the episode, he's sick of Feech's stories about the old days. We do hear a bit about the card game that Tony and Jackie stuck up when they were kids, and the legend of the Feech Lamana game that we've always heard about. Now we have Feech, and Feech wants his game back, even though Uncle Junior currently handles the game, or basically if Uncle Junior's handling it, Tony's handling it.
Yeah, exactly. And Tony sort of reluctantly goes, "Hey, yeah, 20%, and you rent the house from me or whatever." And he says like, I'll just leave before I mess this up further." And I can't tell if he's happy or not, but I think Silvio says like that guy is never happy. It's never enough for this guy, so we better watch out.
Yeah. I think it's very clear that he doesn't like the deal, but his comment is making it seem like, what a great deal. And then he has like a couple other comments too, like we'll send one of the little kids out to get stuff, like when Adriana's like, you want anything? Then he makes kind of a comment about Adriana being attractive or something that, Christopher makes the face at. Then it all kind of ends when he leaves and Tony's like, he's old. And then we get a nice cut to Carmela looking at Botox. Because we're all gonna get old. We're all gonna be Feech one day.
That's the dream.
Yeah.
Looking at these Botox flyers, and AJ comes up, asks about some concert he wants to go to, and she gets to, or has to be, this person who says no all the time, which is what she's been complaining to Tony about. But we swiftly do move on to the actual card game, which, it's working great, but Feech is going around telling this story that no one's interested in listening to, even though, by all accounts, sounds like a great story.
Yeah.
About
He's
putting
got his toe in a stripper's pussy or something.
Yeah. So he's telling the story, but they're just trying to play cards here. And then Tony shows up as well. And everyone's loving Tony, which is another thing we do get into in the whole episode, where he
I think what's important about Feech's story as well is, I think you're right. People are kind of uninterested, but they're still there's a respect there, because as we see like the laughing, because they still are reacting to his story. There's kind of a general feel that they're not really, they could take it or leave it, but they respect Feech enough that they're still kind of laughing and going along with it. And that becomes more important as Tony starts to open his eyes and see what the potential there might be. We should call out, or I'll call out anyways, that Lawrence Taylor is playing the game with them. He's a NFL linebacker from the New York Giants. There's a few cameos like that, because we have LT, and then later on we see David Lee Roth is at the game. He's playing himself as well. And I think even the Brillstein character is like a real person. He's I don't know if he's like an agent or a manager or something like that. So they sprinkle in Bernie Brillstein. They sprinkle in these cameos to show that like they got connections to some of these higher ups.
Yeah. You're now that you mentioned it, that I did recognize at least one of those people you mentioned. I mean, a lot of it is lost on me, to be honest. But Van Halen, the hair, I got there in the end. But like you said, they kind of respect him. They kind of have to, and that ties into what happens with Tony moving forward. But either way, we do get back to AJ, back to his school adventures or misadventures, as they have to sit outside and.
I'm sorry. I know we kind of already talked about it, but I do want to point out too that it is interesting, especially in hindsight, where where the episode's going, the way that Tony comes in and there is this weird battle of like stories, like who wants to be the guy running the room, and then Tony takes he takes his punchline away from him and kind of kapoots. I'm sorry, but go ahead.
I didn't even get his punchline either. Like, both stories were lost on me, to be honest. I'm like, neither of you guys are funny, which is, but everyone's laughing. What a coincidence. Maybe because you have all the money and all the power. So AJ and his parents have to sit and listen as some fucking punk comes out of the office, and he's on the gravy train. He's already heading to college. And it's like, oh, come on in, I guess. And we have to sort of advise AJ on how to actually get his shit together. And I will say, AJ does look more respectable than maybe I've ever seen him in this scene, because he's wearing a shirt, his hair is cut. I'm like, this new school they sent him to maybe worked partially.
Yeah, and I mean, I like his they mentioned the ADD thing, and I do remember that was like in one of the, I think maybe even season 1, where they thought maybe he had ADD.
Yeah.
And he picks up on that, and kind of is even like, well, I get unlimited time on my SATs. It's very now, because especially in America, we're running into this these scams that the rich elites are pulling, where they're pretending their kids have learning disabilities to get unlimited time on the SATs.
Yeah, which I wouldn't know about, but I've heard about it on the podcast Jim and Them, which you can find at jimandthem.com, run by our very own Jim Scampoli.
And Carmela was a common meme, I mean, at least in Sopranos sequels, with that story, because I mean, we've seen Carmela when she's went in and like threatened the lady to write a recommendation for Meadow. So at least in movies and TV, you know, parents go above and beyond. Now we're finding out they're doing it in the real world as well.
Oh, well, I don't know if they're actually gonna get him unlimited time on his SATs.
Oh, yeah.
But as far as I understand, in this scene, he's been analyzed, and like Carmela has some papers about like saying he's basically like a normal kid who just can't get his shit together. Basically, I don't know if that's like an old paper, or if that's like a new thing. But either way, the counselor suggests, or guidance counselor, whatever, is the college application advisor. He suggests maybe he could go see a psychologist on a regular basis. And Tony gets to use his line from the fucking pilot. But whatever happened to the strong silent type? And like, weirdly, I would almost expect him to use his cred of like, no, I've gone for 5 years, it's bullshit. Like, he would do that, but instead he reverts to like, no, I still want to seem like a tough guy who wouldn't see a therapist even to this guy who doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah, just some advisor. And yeah, I guess it's a little weird. I didn't know what to read from. Yeah, when Carmela pulls out the papers, because the advisor kind of, in my mind, throws it more into the middle ground, and Carmela's the one that protests a little and is like, no, I know my son, I just know he's lazy and I need to kind of stay on him. So I don't know if they're really making a statement one way or the other. I feel like probably the feelings is from the show is that maybe we are too quick to say kids have ADD. That was kind of the thing when that first came up on The Sopranos. But either way, it gets through that point. And yeah, I love when Tony brings up Gary Cooper, the strong silent type. It's one of my favorite Tony things. And then they step out of the office. AJ's being like, yeah, dude, I might be learning disabled. And Tony has to be like, yeah. Tony has to be like, aren't you supposed to be going to class? And then we hear about a couple kids that died in a car wreck on their way to school.
Yeah, that was weird, wasn't it? Because, well, we'll get more into that in the next few scenes. I just wanted to mention I loved his comeback as well, where the counselor says, well, Gary Cooper wasn't a 16-year-old kid. And Tony's like, well, he was at one point.
Yeah. So we can assume he was a strong silent type.
Yeah. So we go to Melfi's office, and there's someone sitting out there, and there's like a gift basket that looks more like a chest or something full of bath products and things. Yeah. We already know what's going on at this point. I think Carmela does. Melfi does as well, I think. Yeah,
but she even has to be like, oh, what's this? Like, hoping maybe that guy brought a gift basket, because you know, I do think she knows it's from Tony, but like, oh no, please, not more from Tony Soprano. But yeah, it is from Tony, and then we'll get more of the details later. I like the moment here where then we have AJ with his tutor, and I guess does this predate Google? Oh no, it's got to be around.
I mean, Google existed, but Google is, I mean, it's famously a number as well, right? Or
yes, no, but I just mean like before, like it was the regular thing, because I know Buffy was like one of the first shows to actually reference the Google search engine. But either way, that's neither here nor there. Yeah, well, he's clearly struggling with AJ. Like you could see the kind of desperation of like, give me an answer. And then Tony shows up, perfect timing with a nice new car.
Yeah, and what's your guess on this question? If a million zeros could be written on the front and back of a sheet of paper, how many sheets of paper are necessarily for a Google of zeros? As far as I've found, Reddit explains it as you need a shit ton of paper. I think that's the whole point, is like you need a lot more paper than you think. It's not 2, it's not 100, it's like millions and millions and millions of pieces of paper because it's such a large number.
Yes, yeah, because I don't even know what the number is, because if you
No,
try to
it's
search
like,
what it is, you're going to get a lot of Google Chrome, a lot of Google Drive, a lot of Google Voice.
yeah, no, I mean, I have it here, but I can't read the number because there
Yeah,
are so many
exactly.
zeros. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, I don't really blame him, honestly. Presumably, the only way you can blame him if the answer to the question is written in the book right in front of him and he just read it, then maybe yes. But yeah, he's having some trouble there. But the trouble is cut short because there's a new, nice, fancy car. And yeah, and Tony's using it as a motivational tool. I guess it's more in the right direction than before because it's kind of like, yeah, you can drive it once and then you can drive it when your grades get better, sort of. But I mean, it's still not quite there, but he's trying.
Well, and also I just love they don't focus on it too much, but we see the shitty car that the tutor drives away in after AJ's getting his new SUV for doing nothing really.
Hmm. Yeah. Which maybe I'm just so used to shitty cars, I wasn't like, wow, what a shitty car. I was just like, yeah, oh, he's leaving. But yeah, he has been helpful enough to put his billing in on paper because episodes ago Tony requested, the tutor's got to it's got to be in writing or I won't pay for it. So Carmela has a stack of things to get paid for there, but she's also fairly upset, right? She's kind of
Yeah, because AJ's like consistently mean to her, and he's mean to her
yeah.
here as well. Like, and she's just being nice. She's in the back seat. She makes a comment. Well, first, I like that AJ has to bring up that SUVs eat up the ozone. I'm gonna get shit for this at school, but that's worth it. And yeah, Carmela says something, and then he's like, "I wasn't asking you," or something. Like he's very mean to her, and it makes sense because she has to be the real parent. Tony gets to drop in whatever he wants, and he always has gifts. And to AJ, it's like it's Carmela's fault that Tony had to leave. I think it's a very common thing when parents split up, but she's rightfully upset, and even it's kind of like even mean when Tony is like, "What are you crying?" And it's like, yeah, yeah, this sucks. This is awful.
Yeah. Yeah,
But it's great. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that these kids who died in a car crash or whatever, or one of them died, it's kind of only to give Tony the extra motivation to buy this car, which is kind of a flip. I mean, obviously we're not counting this on a death counter, but I mean, unless this character was in the show before, which I don't think they were, it's kind of a flippant sort of way to just give him that extra boost of motivation, because I would totally buy this scene even without the other scene ending that way. And I kind of expected them to tie in this fact that some kids died in school a bit more into the plot of the show. If they're gonna put it in there, why wouldn't they use it a bit more,
I think it also drives Carmela later in the episode as well. I mean, I think she'd be upset either way, but I feel like
yeah, fair. Yep.
I feel like it's on both of their minds as far as like, okay, we kind of have a shitty kid, but we don't want him to die.
Yeah.
And this could happen. Like it could happen just like that. It's a little clumsy, but I think it's handled well enough, and I think it drives both Tony and Carmela throughout this episode in regards to AJ.
That does make sense. Although Tony later, he's more like, "What was going on in that room? Poppers and weird sex?" And I'm like, "That's not what." Yeah.
But I love
that. Was not what they were. Is that what they were doing in the car? Maybe. Who knows? Anyway, yes. So after this scene, we get the clip from the intro with Melfi reading. Or what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say we should point out that one of the, I think it's a great detail of how Carmela is different is the fact that she does come back to Tony here when he's kind of mean, like, "What are you going to cry?" And then, it comes up. One of the bills is for a new component center for the home theater. And he's like, "Why should I pay for that?" And then he's, just so you and your friends could watch movies. And she comes back with, "At least I have friends."
Yeah.
You're the boss. Everyone's scared of you and they laugh at your stupid jokes. And Tony does his thing where he tries to play it off, but it's even clear, even though it's way more important later, it's clear in this moment that it also kind of hurts. It's like really truthful and hurts him. He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm running a popularity contest. What do I care?"
Yeah, it's a good point because that is very central for his story here in the episode as well, and she is the one who sort of brings that to light. Even though it's like 20 minutes into the episode that this gets brought up, I feel like it in a way it's like his almost his central thing in the episode, tying into Feech and even his own family dealings as well. Anyway, we have Melfi reading the letter, which is such a fun little scene. I mean, for so many reasons, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it works so well as, it's like Tony did sit down to write this, and he really kind of put thought into it, trying to sound intelligent, be on Melfi's level. But also, as Melfi points out, he still kind of blames her more than himself.
Yeah.
And then just, even with Elliot, like saying cunt, and she's like, yes, okay. And, them breaking it down a bit. It's a great scene.
And I mean, Elliot isn't in the episode any more than this, and even this storyline doesn't really move that much besides this, but it is just a way more fun way to do it than have her like read it in a voiceover or read it out loud in her own office, because you get to have them play off each other, and like her reading it to someone who gets why it's fucking weird that he would write this, and he's like, oh, cunt, yes, yes, Elliot, it's cunt, all the spelling mistakes, and I think we've all at some point in our lives written something where we try to sound a lot smarter than we are to make it seem like we're on someone else's level. Feels exactly like something AJ would put in his college application with all the wither twos and therefores and everything. So like father, like son, I say.
Yeah, absolutely. And then after that, it's quick scene. Carmela gets a call from Robert, the advisor. And I mean, I think as we see later that it is like a date, like a dinner date. So
yeah, I mean, just the way he does it, it seems like such a pickup, which is inappropriate, right?
Yeah, but I mean, does Carmela even get it in the moment? That's what I was trying to figure out if I should read it from that scene or not. Like, does she understand she's kind of being courted a little bit? I guess it's not super important, but I'm not sure.
It's a good question. I'm just looking at it now. I think she's in this scene doesn't get it. I think she gets it later. But it's hard to say. I mean, she's smart. She picks up on things around her. So maybe, but I think she's more so focused on AJ's issues that someone coming out with an olive branch, like, I had an idea. It's like, oh my God, really amazing. Let's do this. And then only later it's like, oh, this feels a bit like a date.
Well, I think it's maybe even, I think it's probably better if she doesn't pick it up, because it's like a nice reversal. Usually Carmela's the one that is like, oh, maybe we'll go by and look at your garage to see if your mother will live there. And and Furio might not quite understand what she's getting at, but now Carmela's the one a little bit more busy and not seeing that, she's getting some courtship here, which is kind of nice. It's good for Carmela because, her sad pining can only go on for so long.
Yeah, and I mean, we've all tried that old mom in the garage pickup line, and it's not a surprise that it doesn't work because it's so overplayed by now. But yeah, you're right. She gets some action. Well, not really, but she gets some potential for action. But she tries to mend things with AJ as well. They're having dinner, and you just kind of have to realize the sadness of them having just the two of them sitting there, and like it's pointed out in the episode, it's just the two of them all the time, and you're gonna get on each other's nerves no matter what, never mind the fact that he's having trouble in school and life, but she tries to relate to him with the Beatles trivia and stuff like that, and he's literally like, oh, so this is like common ground. Like being the most teenager ever.
Yeah, it's so heartbreaking, but it's because I've been AJ. I've been that kid where you kind of know your parents are trying to relate to you, but like when you're a kid, it's just like, fuck everyone. I'm the boss. I'm a king. I can do whatever I want. But now that I'm an adult, I kind of relate obviously more with Carmela, and I'm like, oh, she just wants to, this. It's her son. She carried him. She carried him in her womb for 9 months. She raised him, changed his diapers, and she just wants to have a nice dinner. God damn it. Don't tell her it's a basic 4-4. It's a basic 4-4.
And even it's heartbreaking from the other angle as well, because even though AJ obviously is AJ and he's a teenager and he's angsty at everything, but when what is it that what was I thinking of, that she says, oh, she's like, oh, am I really so horrible? And he's like, you're not horrible. And then he has to add, get over yourself. Like, because he's even trying. And then when he wants to go and she's like, just go, and then he's like, ugh, if you're gonna be a martyr about it, I'll stay. And that's his way of reaching out and going like, I don't want to go, but he's being so mean even when trying to do that, that not now she's forcing him to leave, even though he actually doesn't really want to. So everyone's unhappy.
Yes, yeah, it's a really well done scene. Feels very real, it's just kind of what happens. You want to rebel against your parents, be your own person, and especially in this situation. Then we're kind of back at the card game. David Lee Roth's there. They're kind of talking about cars. I like that Tony mentions that he pulled his GPS out because that's such a Tony thing. Like, so at the time, GPS was such a new, elite thing to have in your car. Now it's pretty standard, but you'd be scared. Like, I don't need them track. I'd pull that fucking global positioning shit out.
Yeah. I just remembered just now, like, an episode of Dexter from even like way after this show where they're like, oh, we're going to use the GPS on the car to find the thing. And now it's like, we all are GPS all the time, and our targeted ads are based on what we're close to. So, like, you're not going to murder anyone anytime soon.
And then Feech tells his joke about, this is the first Jewish account never be to heaven. So he gets like all this great stuff over, Jesus or whatever it was. And then Tony's joke is like, the accountant on the airplane, it's a boring 747 or something like that. Yeah, and it's such a bad joke, but everyone's like, ah ha ha ha, laughing hard. And I love this use of the slow-mo and how it comes back to it later. It's one of my favorite things.
I love that slow-mo shot because when Feech is in the background, you kind of expect it to move over to him, and we get the other version of the shot later where it actually does that, because that's what we're thinking of with Feech and everything, and how everyone's like just doing whatever he wants besides Feech. So it's a great shot. I also love how the audio works in the slow-mo shot, because it's not like the audio isn't slowed down, so it's like ho ho ho. It's actually like it's like Paulie Walnuts laughing like he would usually do, and that gives it an extra feeling of they're laughing way longer than they should. And we're in his mind where he gets like woozy and panic attacks and things like that. So it's a good shot, one to really emphasize. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and it's nice because I think we're the audience, we're a little ahead of Tony in this case, like just with as far as Feech is concerned, and Tony's just focusing on Carmela's comment in that people just laugh like he doesn't really have friends, but then later on, it's more in the relation to Feech.
Feech is actually like he has a knife in the background out of focus in that shot, just to point that out.
He's like haunting. He's like haunting in the background. And then from there, we see it's back to Carmela, and then she decides to let AJ go to the Mudvayne concert. They started working, I believe Robert Iller, I don't know if he still does, but at the time was into a lot of these new metal bands. So they did work a lot of this stuff in from what he was really into.
Oh yeah, I didn't even realize it was a real band until just now, because it does sound like Mudvayne. It sounds like a made-up band for a show, but I guess they're real. But you're right. Like she brings up later, this is her like falling for this is her folding because she doesn't like being the bad guy. She doesn't like the scene that just happened. She wants to be more like Tony, even though she knows what Tony's doing is actually wrong.
Yes, and she tries to at least do a compromise, let him go to the concert, but then just go stay with Meadow, which is very reasonable. But no, as we see, not to AJ. Then we see the car heist going on at the doctor's kid's wedding. He was talking about the wedding earlier in the scene, and at first I didn't make the connection. I just thought, oh, Tony decided to rob his friend, until we, later on when Tony gets word on it. Because even when he goes to see him and Tony's at the Bing and he's all kind of fucked up a little bit, and he's like, hey, the wedding. I thought he was being Tony, like, of course I know the wedding's going on. I stole all your friends' cars. But no, Tony actually didn't do it.
Yeah, I think I connected it to Feech pretty much at once, just because they were focusing so much on him and his card game, and
Yeah.
the battle going on between him and Tony and all. And what is it? They like leave the American cars or whatever, or like leave some of them but take some of
Yeah,
them, right?
one of the gags they throw in is like they left all the American cars. Yeah, they took all the foreign cars. I guess they're worth more. I don't know shit about cars
Okay.
because they're saying a
Yeah,
bunch of
yeah.
car stuff around here, and I don't know what they're talking about. Like I got the S70. I had to get on a waiting list.
Yes. To tell us what the fuck we're talking about, please do email us at showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com with all your car info so we can broaden our understanding a bit. AJ does come out of this concert and he calls Meadow to say, oh, yeah, I don't know if I can make it. And Meadow's not complaining too much because she's got her hot boyfriend there and they're fooling around on the couch. They don't really want AJ in the picture anyway, so she goes along with the whole lie. Meanwhile, Carmela's having a nice glass of wine in a bath with some bubbles, and she's still not looking happy.
Yeah, and I mean I've never seen Frida, but I believe they're watching Frida, and I guess that just gets the juices going because yeah, Meadow and Finn are ready to get it on, when it first cuts to Carmela in the tub, I'm like, oh, good for you, she's having a nice relaxing night, but yeah, she's still worrying about AJ. She calls Meadow, and then even tries to, connect with her daughter a little bit, but she's ready to do the dance, do the naked dance. So she doesn't want to. We're in the middle of a movie. I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah, exactly. Even though the movie's finished, I believe you're right. I think that is the film, and I think I've seen it. I don't remember much.
Shit.
Smoking the weed, I assume, out of a homemade Sprite bottle bong or something. Yeah.
You froze up. I got you back now, though.
Shit. Okay. I was just saying, AJ's smoking the weed. He's puffing on that good stuff out of a huge Sprite bottle or something, right?
Yeah, I believe you also said you don't remember much of Frida. I assume it's because you and your girlfriend just started having sex as soon as it started. Got you really.
I mean, this makes so much sense because it explains why you didn't laugh at my hilarious joke I made where I was like, I don't remember much, but I did get very horny. Like, okay. So this makes a lot more sense now. Yeah. Anyway, over to AJ, and yeah, he's got these friends there, and they're gonna like draw on each other, and they're gonna get fucked up in this hotel room, which is bad. But I guess, to be fair, what they're doing is not that bad. I mean, it's bad, but they're not out getting like into car crashes. They're literally just sitting in this room and like drawing on each other. They're not even fucking up the room except gluing his face to the carpet.
I mean, it is mostly, yeah, run-of-the-mill teenage boy shit. I mean, the gluing the face and the shaving the eyebrows is a tad extreme, but, sometimes you get there.
Yep, very true. And we do. And by the way, these are his new cool friends, I guess. Like, were they in the picture when he met his girlfriend and that, or are these new people? I don't even know.
As far as I know, they're new people, but yeah, you never know with AJ. He hangs out with the football kids. He hangs out with the other rich kids. He's making friends everywhere.
Seriously though, he might not have the grades, but he's a social butterfly from what I've seen. Like, he never gets into a fight with anyone from school. Everyone kind of likes AJ and wants to hang out with him. He's got a hot girlfriend that he brags about to his dad later. So I mean, the kid's not doing that bad. And so, yeah, like you mentioned, we have the doctor show up to the strip club, and Tony finds out that the cars were boosted and all of that. I think he makes the connection, but it's not until a few scenes later we get to actually pick up on it. They really want to find this one car. Like Tony says, the insurance will cover it, but that's not the point. It's a very special car, which makes you kind of go like, well, fuck these people.
Yeah. He paid $30,000 just to kind of get on the list to get the car or something really rich people do. And then, then we see AJ's glued to the rug. It's pretty funny. The phone's ringing because Carmela's calling. They don't want to answer. The maid's knocking on the door. The other dude has some stuff drawn in his face, but it's not quite as bad as having your eyebrows shaved.
Yeah. Well, at least they replaced them. Isn't that kind of fashionable these days?
Yeah, they drew him on.
Yeah.
Carmela calls Tony. She's very upset. She's worried that he's dead, basically. Because, again, I think that ties into what happened with those kids that died on their way to school.
Yeah.
And, Tony, like, calm down. I'll go over there. I'll go check it out. As AJ gets home, says fuck you to his mother, and then she tries to chase him up the stairs, and she falls and like bangs her knee, and it is like it's like AJ, what are you doing? And he even has a moment like he has to stop for a second, but it's like you can't go back and apologize because you've got all this teenage angst. So you understand things are getting bad, but he just runs to his room.
Yeah, because he stops and looks back at her, and he's like, "Oh shit, I should do something." And then when she looks at him, it's like, and he just like teenages out and has to run off.
Yeah.
Let's see. Christopher's phoning car guy, their car guy, to figure out where these cars are going, and they're gonna make some calls. And like, of course, Tony can do this. He's just call up like someone, and then we find we've seen him find stolen cars before. So, he didn't because it was already taken apart, right? So he had to like boost a new car for AJ's teacher or something.
That was when he had Big Pussy though, because Big Pussy had the auto shop. So yeah, maybe that's where they would have found it quicker.
Ever since he went into witness protection, we've just been playing catch up with these cars. Well. So Tony, he doesn't care so much about the car thing at the moment because he has trouble with his family, and he rushes home and he's ready to give that kid a 1-2 what for, and really he's mad, and then AJ just manages to do his AJ thing, and Tony just completely folds, as he's done a lot of times in the past. And that is like, first I was like, oh, that's the big turning point of the scene. But the big thing is that Carmela's had enough of both of them, as she says, and actually goes, well, you take him then, because I can't deal with this.
Yeah, and it harkens back to Meadow and how she knew how to kind of handle her parents. And I feel like if we weren't dealing with this separation and this other stuff going on between Tony and Carmela, this would have worked on both of them. There is a nice moment where AJ's still kind of hung over and he sees Tony pull up pissed off. So he like kind of throws a clean shirt on and makes it seem like he's cleaning his room or whatever. And it's so great. There's some funny moments here when Tony sees him without the eyebrows and he goes, what's different? He's like, what's different about you? Wait, what's going on? And then, yes, the line that he says, it's something like, that teacher, is there some kind of proclivity with you and that teacher? Poppers and weird sex. And I don't know where he gets this from. And I assume that teacher, is he talking about the advisor? Like, does he think it's somehow related to that? It's just a really funny, random line. And I don't know where he gets it from.
Or is it like is it like the teacher from last season who was assigning all these gay books according to Carmela? Is that what he's talking about?
Maybe, I don't know, but it's a funny line because it's just like, what are you doing? Like he's Tony's going crazy, kind of. And then yes, it comes to a head where finally Carmela's like, he can just he can go live with you, and it does feel like it is a good decision, because fine, let Tony be the parent for a while, and AJ does, because even AJ's like, yeah, let's do that, because he is under this impression that it would be better. You see, I mean, maybe in some respects it is a lot of guys hanging out eating pizza and wings watching TV, but then you still got Tony around that's going to be like, go do your homework. It's not going to be with Carmela.
Yeah, I mean, he wanted to move in with Tony when Tony was just living in their home cinema. So to him, it's like, oh, cool, great, this will be great. But yeah, it is probably a good move just to make AJ realize that Carmela's not evil, and that Tony's, just that he lets AJ get away with stuff doesn't make him a good parent. And we'll probably get to see some of that moving forward. Carmela, she does say, like, she lays it out basically that AJ's not doing anything wrong. He's just testing the limits as he should. And then we're the ones who are doing it wrong, specifically you, because I can't do it with you doing all this stuff. So why don't you deal with it for a bit? And yeah, it does seem like it's all cool. We're just eating pizza, talking about hotboxing each other and such, and watching old black and white films, because no one can like afford to watch a new thing in this show ever. So yeah, fun times.
Yeah, they're watching Jackie Gleason, which is the guy that's like, boy, are you fat? And I do like the little detail of like, remember that time we left Artie out in the snow and he almost lost his fingers? We still laugh about it to this day. It's such a great
Yeah.
Artie story. But yeah, so that's all going on because now he gets to live with not only Tony but Artie's there, and sometimes Tony B's there, and they're having wings, watching sports. But meanwhile, Feech goes to see Tony because Tony needs to ask him about the cars. And I like how it does. Tony brings up like, this is the second time I'm playing catch up with you, and he almost sounds crazy. Where he's like, the lawn thing, but he's right. Feech, it's what, he didn't go to him with a cut. I mean, he did have it ready because he knew he was probably like in trouble, but he very well could have just tried to keep it out of Tony's ear and try to just keep all the money himself.
Yeah, I think he only had it in an envelope because he got a call like, hey, you got to come over, and he figured that's what it was about. But yeah, Tony, let's see. We do get this sort of flash here because it's all getting crazy, and he's yelling about, what, I have to call you every time I move my bowels, and he mentions that you put those cars through some other shop, not the ones that we have, and he mentions that Johnny Sack put him onto this place, and that's not going to calm Tony down necessarily, or I mean, not that Tony's more mad about it, but it's worrying. Whenever someone starts talking to Johnny Sack, they probably need to be gotten out of there. And Tony also gets to yell like, I don't want to hear any more of your shit stories.
I don't want to hear any more about back in the day. And to Feech's point, it makes sense because he's like, look, to me, like, you're a kid. You were a kid, and now you're the boss. And that's somewhat similar to what Tony B's dealing with, of like, you were just my best friend, my brother, but now I have to think of you as the boss. That's going to be kind of tough to adjust to a little bit. And then then we see the flashback again to the laughing, and Feech is just making him fun. He's staring daggers at him, and as you said, he's got a knife in his hand. He's like buttering bread or some shit. And it's a nice callback too, because Tony just says, "Did I learn nothing from Richie April?" Which I like that they kind of call it out here that this could be another Richie April situation, but Tony is a little bit smarter now. He's going to nip it in the bud, and basically, we can go through the thing. He just sets them up for the most part. It's done. It plays off of Feech's thing that we know, even though it hasn't been that many episodes. He likes to have his fingers in everything, so it's such a perfect way to set him up. Just the fact that, we got this thing going on, like, oh, let me help because I'll get a piece. I'll at least get something out of it. He's always working that Feech Lamanna.
Yeah, and I not that I've read it wrong, but I had a different impression of what was going on, because I thought, okay, Tony is really realizing that no one's being honest with him, like no one's acting, like telling him what they actually think. And then when we cut to everyone else laughing, yucking it up, and then we see Feech, I thought it might have gone the direction of like, well, Feech doesn't treat me like everyone else. Maybe I actually need someone like him around to like tell me when I'm being a fucking idiot. I mean, Silvio is kind of there to do that, but Silvio's a kiss ass as well. Everyone is. But like Feech would be someone who, if I can get him on my side properly, maybe he would actually be useful to have around. And they hug it out after that. And then, like you said, after he leaves, he goes like, hey, well, actually, Silvio goes, maybe I was wrong about him. So maybe Silvio's getting the same feel that I am, because Feech does seem relatively genuine when he actually apologizes and says he'll learn, and hey, I still see you as a kid. But Tony decides the risk isn't really worth it. Let's nip it in the bud. And when Christopher comes over, I'm like, oh, they're going to like drive him out somewhere and shoot him in the fucking head. That's so depressing. But it's funny because it's like, well, he's a made man, so you can't do that. But you can totally set him up to go to jail.
Yeah. He's and as Silvio says, he's well liked. But then Tony points out that's actually kind of part of the problem as well. And I guess maybe he's even not only just learning from the Richie April thing, but maybe what's going on in New York, when we don't need other well-liked people to maybe start a potential war or what have you over who's kicking up to who and who has what say on whatever. So it's a brilliant way that Tony handles this, even though it is kind of like maybe breaking the code a bit. It's not quite going FBI informant, but it's very close because we have to assume that that drop in that happens isn't just unprompted. Like, there's things going on behind the scenes to have that happen while the truck's there with stolen merchandise in his garage.
Yeah, exactly. It is a smart move, like you said, getting rid of him. My assumption is, again, having not watched The Sopranos, we're not going to see this guy again. But because that's also something they do of like, oh shit, season 5 is gonna be all about Feech. It's like, no, he's back in jail now.
And in a weird
look on his face. Sorry to cut you off. I was just gonna say, like you rightly pointed out, he does a lot of like big acting in like the previous episodes when he's yelling at Paulie and all of that. But the look on his face when he's on that bus as well is a lot more subtle, and it's a good way to go out on this character.
And it's also like, in a weird way, a little more heartbreaking than just, being brought out of the woods and have a bullet in your head, where it's like, all right, back to the old clink, gonna spend the rest of my life in jail, basically, at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. And then, so we just have a quick scene where Silvio's like, oh, yeah, Christopher agrees. And Tony's like, well, that's cute, but fuck everyone. I'm
gonna run a popularity contest. I'm going to eat my sandwich and fuck
you all.
Yes. And then we come back to Carmela to end the episode. And she's, we kind of, you can see where this is going, because as we've talked about the house, it's been getting more and more run down and seemingly bigger in a weird way, as we've lost Meadow, and then we've lost Tony. Now it's AJ. But I like this little thing they throw in with the kind of quick little flashback memory. And it's, we see AJ at the beginning zipping around in his car in the driveway, and then we see a flashback to a little AJ zipping around on his big wheel, and Carmela having to chase him down so he doesn't die.
Yeah. Yeah. And then like she walks in and we get a great shot of her and the hugeness of the empty house. And I really did think like the pool has never been more empty. Like thinking back to the ducks and that, like that was a thought in my head. And I was like, wow, I really am a twat, aren't I? Like, cause that was my first thought, like where all the ducks have flown away, Jacob. Oh, wow. Like,
what made that ending scene perfect is then the ducks come out of the fireplace or something.
And then that's another flashback. She's like, and then the ducks are gone. We did totally skip over her date, but it's skippable stuff. I think with everything else going on, she gets to feel kind of like she's being pursued, like you said, but it's also a bit awkward because she's not on the same level as this guy who just, like, to be fair, he's kind of like, oh yes, in this book, and this author, it's like just like that, and she's like, oh, I'll have to pick that up, and she can't even spell it when she's writing it down.
Yeah, Madame Bovary, which I've never read. I've heard it referenced in movies and TV before. Quick thing, I mean, I guess the summary here, it tells a bleak story of a marriage that ends in tragedy. Mm-hmm. There's a thing going on with Charles Bovary, a good-hearted but dull and unambitious doctor with a meager practice, marries Emma, a beautiful farm girl raised in a convent. She anticipates marriage as a life of adventure. She finds that her only excitement derives from the flights of fancy as she takes while reading sentimental romantic novels. She grows increasingly bored and unhappy with her middle-class existence, and even the birth of her daughter brings Emma little joy. I'm not going to go too much into it, but it does. Grasping for intimacy, she begins to act out her romantic fantasies and embarks on a disastrous love affair. So this guy's really planting seeds here. Like, remember your bad marriage that you're separated? Maybe you need to spice it up with a nice love affair with me, the advisor.
Yeah. And usually you'd expect them to do like the title of the episode as a reference to the book that's referenced in the show, but they don't do that. It's All Happy Families is the name of the episode. It's from the opening sentence of Anna Karenina. So all happy families are alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. Referring, of course, to how, shit is falling apart in this family. And it also kind of saying that it's more interesting to have a story about a broken family because a happy family is just boring.
Yeah. And also, like, it's not like Tony's ever going to recommend a book to Carmela. So it's this nice new thing and a new person you get to learn about, and they kind of respect your intelligence more, and it's just all the open opportunities that could come along with that.
Weirdly, I don't think he does. Like, this is my prejudice of him. Like, on this date, he's not really talking to her. He's not really connecting. He's just kind of blabbing.
Yeah.
It's kind of connected, but he's totally failing at making a meaningful connection there. It feels like he's just attracted to her. But we'll see if I'm wrong or right moving forward in season 5.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
I'm feeling it. We're working right on through. We're getting there.
yeah, and like I said, they have some mob stuff. I mean, especially with Feech, but also like the slow plot of New York and what's going on there is very much in the background in this episode. Like, we have 2 deaths, but they're like only referenced in one scene, and then it's like about Feech and his stealing cars from Tony's pals. Like, it's zooming in and out of different areas a lot, and the New York thing is still sort of simmering. And as we know from The Sopranos, sometimes things simmer and come to a boil. Sometimes they just explode, or they just go to jail. That's another thing that could happen. So I'm interested to see where it goes. Please do send your thoughts to us either on showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com or just leave a review on iTunes, and we'll read out your thoughts on the show, on this show, and just on The Sopranos. Besides that, there is jimandthem.com for Jim's other content. I also have content, as they say these days, at awesomepedia.org. And besides that, there's only one more thing we need to point out.
Oh, wait, what's that?
Oh, that would be cut to black.